Hey guys, it's Virtual from Zenith Corporation, and you probably saw the first video where I built a nice default speeder from the default speeder parts. That's way better at getting around Alioth than the speeder that NQ provides you with from the start. But anyway, a lot of people say they want to go to space, so I'm going to show you guys how you can modify your default speeder to get it to space easily, quickly, and inexpensively. So this is just the speeder that you saw me build. If you haven't seen that video, I suggest you go watch that unless you already have something nice like this. It uses only the default speeder parts, and it's quite effective at getting you from place to place. You can also strap a container to the top if you want, and other things like that. But anyway, we're going to get right into it. I'll show you how you can modify your ship and what some of the space components do. So I'm going to go ahead and maneuver the ship up a bit. The first thing that you want to know when you get to space is that you need to be able to fly your ship up to 3,500 meters before your space engines kick on. If you can't get that high with atmospheric, then you need to add more atmospheric engines. Now I actually tested it beforehand, and I know that this one won't quite make it, so I am going to slap a atmospheric engine to the back. Now there is this bug. You see that the blocks have gone away. That's interesting. I think a way to fix this bug is... yeah, maybe not. Well, I guess we're not going to have those blocks. Anyway, I'm just going to place this small atmospheric engine on the back, and I briefly showed you guys how you can do this in the first part of the video, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. Put the engine on the back, and now something else you're going to need is space fuel tank, space engines, a retro rocket brake, and a vertical booster. I have all those things in my inventory, and I'll show you how to use it. Once again, to remove fuel from your fuel tank, you have to hold Alt and click. Once the fuel's gone, you can actually pick up your fuel tank. So I'm going to go ahead and replace that tank with this the space fuel tank. This is the smallest space fuel tank that we can have, and unfortunately it's massive, as you can see. And that's certainly good enough. I suppose if you hit the ground too hard, it might make a really nice explosion, maybe some pretty fireworks. Now I gotta place the atmospheric tank back on here somewhere. I think we'll just throw it down here. That'll do. Alright, I don't have... let me see, I think I have some space. Yeah, I'm gonna actually have to get some space fuel out of my ship. Excuse me. I didn't have that ready. So there's 4 different types of space fuel. There's X1 fuel, X2 fuel, X3, and then X4, and they're all made with different things. So it's a combination of some Tier 1 ores, hydrogen and oxygen, and then a Tier 2 ore, depending on which X version you have. So I have X4 currently. Now you can't mix the versions, so if you want to put X2 in a fuel tank that has X4 fuel, you've got to remove the X4 first. It can become a bit of a pain, but you'll certainly get used to it. So now that space fuel tank is so big that I'm not going to fill it up nearly all the way, because that's not necessary. But I am going to fill up the atmospheric fuel tank all the way. Now I have 4 extra small space engines, which might be a little bit overkill, but hey, it'll definitely get us off the ground. I'm just going to slap those on the side of the ship, just kind of randomly. And 2 more. Let's put them beside each other. Doesn't really matter how you do this. Actually, I'm going to be flying into space and stop thinking because my OCD. So I will actually fix that. Okay, there we go. So we've got the space engines on there. Now something else that you're going to want to change is this hover engine. I suggest you replace your hover engine with a vertical booster. The vertical booster is basically the same as the hover engine, except it works in no atmosphere. So the hover engine only works in atmosphere, but the vertical booster works anywhere. So I have here a small vertical booster, and I'm just going to place it right down there. Now the vertical booster also takes space fuel, so that's something that you should know. Also keep in mind when you're placing parts on your ship that you're going to need to move your adjusters. So I'm going to move these 2 adjusters down to the bottom of my ship, and then I also need one up here on top that I missed. Now last but certainly not least is your retro rocket brake. Now this allows you to slow down in space. If you don't have it, you're going to have to turn and burn and hope for the best. I think I'll just put it here on the bottom. That'll work. Okay, cool. So I guess now we'll try it. So far this design has yet to be tested, so I don't know if it'll work or not. Now there is some things I'd like to talk about as we start our flight up to 3,500 meters. One thing is the engine warm-up time. Now there is also a notable difference with the vertical booster, is that it actually you can hover your ship a lot higher. So that's something good to know. Anyway, we'll go ahead and get started. If you click X 3 times, you'll be able to see your trajectory. Actually, first I'm going to configure my seat. When you add new elements to your construct, you should configure your seat so that you can see the new tabs. So now I see I have my atmospheric and my space fuel. And remember, once again, when you build your ship, don't fill up the tank all the way or it's going to be too heavy. Alright, so 3 times on X so that we can see the trajectory. And now I'm going to begin my climb at a relatively shallow angle. I don't know if you saw it or not, but you probably saw that the extra small engines warmed up faster than the small engines. A small engine is equivalent to 6 extra small engines, I believe, and it continues to go on from there. So a large engine is 6 medium engines, for example, and each time the engine gets bigger, the warm-up time increases. So your large engine is going to have a huge warm-up time compared to your like smaller, extra small, or even medium engine. And obviously that's for more thrust. Furthermore, they're also more fuel efficient. So your large engine is actually a little more fuel efficient than the equivalent 6 medium engines. Also, at a higher altitude, your ship is more efficient. So when I'm way up here, my ship is a little bit more efficient and I'm not using as much fuel. So if you can't get to space but you still want to travel the globe, you can add or you can fly actually up high like I am here, and that'll help you out. Now I'm barely gonna make it. If I do, it'll be impressive. We'll see. As you can see, my trajectory is coming to an end and I'm running out of wings on my ship. Like I said, 3,500 is where it starts. Now if this doesn't work, I'm just going to slap another small engine at the bottom. Alright, so as you can see, my space engines have turned on. However, they're not producing a lot of power because I'm still in a bit of atmosphere. So we have to wait until they produce enough power to hold my ship up. And you can see the little flame at the end getting bigger. And now my trajectory is increasing, meaning that I've succeeded. As you can hear, they're still warming up. Now once we're completely out of the atmosphere, the warm-up time is much quicker. However, like I said, once again, with the bigger engines, the warm-up time is slower. Now with space engines, there's also an extra large engine, which is completely massive, and as you can see, even these tiny extra small engines are producing enough thrust to send us pretty much to infinity and beyond, if you will. And in my case, I am falling with style. Speaking of falling with style, an orbit is falling around a planet, and that brings us into the trajectory colors. A red trajectory means you're going to crash. For example, if I turned off my engines now, I would fall back to the planet and crash. Now on Alioth, about 3,500 to 4,000, depending on your altitude, is orbital velocity. And you'll see that with the color change of the line. I'm going to go ahead and flatten out with the planet to increase my speed. Now you can see I'm accelerating quickly up to orbital velocity, and when we hit orbit, the line will become green. Let's go ahead and wait for that to happen, and you'll get to see it. Also, there is a time estimate on the bottom right for the amount of space fuel you have. I have 73 minutes. That's why I didn't fill up the fuel tank all the way. In queue, please add a fuel tank. that's extra small. So as you can see, the trajectory is now green, but my speed is decreasing, and that's because I'm still in the atmosphere. If you want to continuously orbit the planet, you're going to need to be a little bit higher, aka 6,000 meters or so. Now, a blue trajectory means that the orbit is elliptical. So as you can see, as I continue flying with my thruster, the line becomes more blue, meaning the orbit is elliptical, and then eventually the line will become purple. Keep in mind it is easier to change your direction when you're going slower. To change your direction in an orbit, go ahead and put your ship at 90 degrees and keep in mind flat with the trajectory. And if you thrust at 90 degrees, you can see that the trajectory of my orbit changes. This is useful if you're trying to land. Now to make the orbit decrease, you can hold Control to activate your retro rocket brake. And as you can see, my orbit becomes more green as I slow down again. If you play a little bit of Kerbal Space Program, you'll know exactly what I mean. Now we'll get into the next thing. Let's go ahead and set the Sanctuary Moon, or actually let's just set one of the moons on Alioth as our destination. So when I click Set Destination on the map, a marker will show up showing me where I need to go to the moon. 7.6 SU is about 1,400 kilometers, I believe. 1 SU is 200 kilometers. So now, as you can see, I'm thrusting at 90 degrees to my trajectory to change my trajectory toward the moon. This takes a little while, but be patient with it. Now, the max speed in space is 30,000 kilometers per hour. As you get closer to 30,000 kilometers per hour, it becomes harder and harder to go that fast. I think they're attempting to simulate light speed. That being said, the most efficient speed to travel at is probably around 25,000. It's going to use the least amount of fuel, and you'll be concerned with fuel as you get into bigger ships. With a smaller ship like this, it doesn't really matter. As you can see, my line is becoming blue, and pretty soon we'll see it click over to purple. Once again, I'm flying at 90 degrees to my trajectory, pointed right at the moon. Now, as I'm flying, you can actually see my acceleration, and it's on the right side of the screen. We have the braking, which is 0 out of 100 kilonewtons, and then the acceleration, which is 1.4 g. That is how fast my ship is accelerating. Remember that 1 g is 9.8 meters per second squared. Now, if I hold Control, we actually get 100 kilonewtons of braking. I'm not going to do that because it would slow me down. And you can also calculate about how much brakes you need per the weight of your ship. As you can see, my trajectory is now purple, which means if I turn off my engines, I'll continue drifting away from the sphere of influence of Alioth. Now we'll continue to perform our course correction toward the moon. Now keep in mind, you probably don't want to have the trajectory pointed straight at the moon or you'll crash into it. So I'm going to actually point my trajectory just over the moon so that I will kind of arc around it. The moon also has gravity, and when you get close, the gravitational effects will become more pronounced. Alright, you can see the trajectory is nearly pointed over the moon, so now I'm going to just thrust along my trajectory to increase my velocity. If you do this too much, keep in mind that you might end up not having time to slow down. If that is in fact the case, there is one trick that you should know. Alt F4. When you Alt F4, your construct comes to a stop. If you're the only one on it, forced respawning also works. So if you really get into a pinch, I don't recommend this because it might be considered cheating, but if you get into a pinch, Alt F4, you'll come to a stop. Easy peasy. Now I'm also going to be giving away a beta key to a subscriber. So if you would like a beta key, hit me up on Discord, like send me a friend request and say you want to enter for the giveaway. There's not enough people actually subscribed to really flood my stream too much, so you might have a pretty good chance. So subscribe to the channel and send me on Discord that you'd like to enter, and I will be giving away a beta key. Now the beta key gives you access to all of beta, which is, I mean, probably at least a year, and it'll be free for you. So I'll just send that key to your email and you'll be able to activate it. We're continuing to accelerate, and as we hit 10,000 kilometers per hour, that is 1/3 of the top speed in the game. At this point, we're really cruising. However, planets are really far apart in DU. As you can see, if I open my map, some planets are even as far as 500 SU away, and that is a good 5.5 hour flight. I'm going to go ahead and throttle down and coast so that I can slow down in time. And as we're coasting, I'd like to go through some of the things on the build helper. Excuse the background noise, my cat's walking on my desk. So if I click tab, I can click up here on the build helper, and I can see construct information. I can see the mass of the ship, the honeycomb, the elements, etc. What you're really worried about is these things here. In particular, the space element report and the atmospheric element report. If you'd like to make a ship that is capable of going to space, try to match about what I've done. Let's see, common element report, what's the actual... That's interesting, normally it actually has a amount of acceleration my ship has. That's actually not here. But we can still, I think I have to be in build mode to see that. I'm not actually going to get out of my seat because I don't remember if I was standing on the ship when I got out. However, if you're standing on the ship when you got out of your build seat, you can actually hop out of your, hop out of your seat and walk around on your ship. You can go into build mode on your ship, you can work on your ship. You can also jetpack around your ship. As long as you are inside of the ship's build zone when you're flying around it in jetpack mode, you will not be left behind. However, if you go out of the build zone, you'll be left behind by the ship, and the ship will stop. Also, if the server crashes, the ship comes to a stop. So if you're flying during a time where you expect the server will crash a lot, make sure you bring a couple accelerations worth of fuel. That is a very good tip, and hopefully it'll save you hours of frustration getting stranded 3 hours from the nearest fuel stop. And we're beginning to approach the moon, and since I've never actually tested this ship before, I'm going to click control just a bit to see how fast it slows down. Not super fast, but it'll be good enough. I think I'm going to start braking at about 1 SU. Keep in mind that you can turn burn, and this will allow you to slow down much faster. The moon is also the reason I added a vertical boosters to the ship. If you were planning on just flying to another atmospheric planet, the vertical booster is unnecessary. However, if you want to land on a moon with no atmosphere, or on a space station, the vertical booster is entirely necessary. On the topic of space stations, they actually produce a little bit of their own gravity. So if you're landing on a space station, all you have to do is get close-ish to the space station, and your ship will get sucked down onto the platform in the direction of the core. If you want to be able to get off that core and you don't have a vertical booster, you can always just maneuver your ship off of the space station. But having the vertical booster is much more useful. And I'll show you why you want it once we land on the moon. Now keep in mind, all different planetary bodies have different gravitational values. I click System and Zone, I can see that Alioth has a gravity of 1.01 G, and the moon that we're flying to has a gravity of 0.24 G, so that means flying is going to be much easier, and orbital velocity is also going to be much easier. I'm not actually going to cover it in this video because it would take me too long to fly back. However, re-entering the atmosphere is very similar to what I'm about to do on the moon, except you need to be careful not to burn. Depending on your ship's cross-section, you might actually burn at a relatively low speed when you come into the atmosphere. About 1,000 kilometers per hour is a good speed at which you should enter the atmosphere, and by the time you get to 6,000 meters above the surface, you should be going about 1,000 kilometers per hour. If you're going faster than that, you risk burning. If you're going slower than that, you might not be able to pull out of your dive. Now I actually want to land a little bit more on the bright side of the moon, so I'm going to turn 90 degrees to my trajectory, lower it a bit, and correct it so that I move to the bright side of the moon. As you can see, the trajectory is kind of following along in the direction at which I'm burning. And also, we're beginning to see a little arch over the moon since we're getting close to it, and the gravity is increasing. Now, I have been asked before, do slingshots happen in Dual Universe? And the answer is no. In real life, a slingshot happens when a spacecraft's velocity is slower than the planet it's about to slingshot around, which means that some of the velocity of the planet is transferred to the spacecraft. However, in Dual Universe, the planets are not moving, so a slingshot is impossible. On the topic of planetary bodies, the sun is part of the skybox. No, you can't fly there. I've been asked that before too. So now that I'm getting close, I'm going to go ahead and turn and burn to begin my deceleration. I'm holding control and burning in the opposite direction. You can see the space engines firing and also the retro rocket lit up. If you overshoot, not to worry, you can always fly back to the moon. The moons have such low gravity that it isn't really a pain. I do actually suggest practicing landing on the moon before you go somewhere else that's important. Also, practice with a ship that isn't so important. Don't do your first space flight with a giant cargo container on top. If for some reason you wanted to modify the ship to carry a bit of ore, you can always add another atmospheric engine to it and then an excess container on top. And you should be able to get a little bit of ore off the planet. Some more stabilizers would also be useful. In build mode, you can see a good report on the things that you might need. So now that I'm going 2,000 kilometers per hour, I know that I'm at a good speed to land on the planet. Moons also have all different types of ore. Most moons have T1s in various abundances. However, Alioth moons do not have a good ore distribution. I do not suggest coming here to mine. If you do, you'll probably be disappointed. One of my org members actually flew out to this moon and he scanned over 30 tiles and did not find a single deposit higher than T1. Basing on the moon, although feasible, is probably not the greatest choice either unless you're okay with shipping ore from Alioth to the moon. However, other moons in the system, for example, Feli Moon 1, are an excellent choice for a base because they have so much ore, and a lot of the ore on these moons can be found in great abundance. So now that we're getting close to the moon, you can see on the right side my mini-map has popped up. And you can also see the altitude, so I am 20 kilometers above the surface. The gravity, as you can see, is still extremely low because we're still relatively far from the mass. In real life, obviously, we'd have more gravity by now, but it's a video game. Another thing to keep in mind is that there's no atmosphere, so who really cares how fast you're going? As you can see, the moon is sucking me in, and my trajectory is falling. So I would actually like to go over there to that lake, just because I think it's pretty, so I'm going to go ahead and turn and burn and flip my trajectory around, and you can see that happen now. I'm reducing my velocity to 0, and then once my velocity is at 0, I'm going to correct in the direction I would like, stop holding control, and fly down to the surface. Now when you land on any planet, you don't want to land at a very downward steep angle of attack. You want to land relatively flat. And I'll show you this now. When I land, I'm going to want to flatten out my trajectory a bit. just so that when I come down, I'm at a safe speed. Now when you land, you're going to want to hit control and also space, and that will fire up your vertical and allow you to safely come down on the planet. Now if you have a lot of weight, that could be very dangerous, so be careful. Anyway, now that we're on the moon, you can jump around like the spaceman that you are and enjoy the extremely low gravity. Now like I was mentioning, in build mode you can see things like this thrust helper, atmospheric helper, and things like that. If you would like to make a ship that is capable in a similar way to my ship, go ahead and copy down these stats. I'll also open up the cross sections tab here. If you can get your stats similar to this, your ship should be able to get space and you'll be all fine. Now keep in mind that your mass does increase with the mass of your player inventory. So if you don't have anything in your inventory, you'll be fine, but if you're carrying some heavy stuff, maybe think twice. The moon's the same, it also has tiles, just like you'd expect. And anyway, I hope this video helped a bunch, and it helped you get off Alioth for the first time. Enjoy your explorations, and thanks for watching the video. Don't forget to send me on Discord and subscribe to the channel, and I'll be giving away that beta key soon. See ya!